the motivation behind this meeting and the one that follows next week is for Firebrand and Socialist Horizon to clarify and discuss organizing strategy. In particular, the goal is to get to the bottom of issues we debated in fits and starts 3 years ago. It is unclear where or whether we disagree because we never really explored the matter thoroughly enough or communicated clearly enough. So this is an attempt to work to resolve that communication. Um, so I want to suggest that some differences, our differences between Firebrand and Socialist Horizon comrades came up um, that involve a tension between two Leninist truisms. One, without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. And two, consciousness changes through struggle. So these are Leninist truisms and true ones, I would say. I think that we agree on that. And it's just a matter of kind of where we put our emphasis. The tension between those two, I think, is echoed between the tension or echoed by or echoed in the tension between theory and practice, between teaching and learning, between vanguardism and tailism, between propaganda and agitation. Um, we have no use for tailism, obviously, but for the rest of this list, we need both, and we just need to get the balance right for our objective and subjective conditions. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason. Much of the work of being a revolutionary is to learn from our fellow workers and oppressed people, both around us and flung across space and time. But we also have something special to offer to movements against exploitation and oppression, the Marxist tool set for understanding and changing the world. And we should offer that up with confidence and conviction. Because we accept these truisms, those truisms, and on the necessity of theory and struggle, we want to meet people coming into motion, entering into struggle, uh, trying to grapple with changing the world or their conditions. And so we do that by relating to protests and picket lines with the goal of keeping people in motion and directing that motion toward class struggle. So tonight we read, and I'm mostly going to just review and comment on the main reading for tonight, the Mick Armstrong. And I think Armstrong makes a clear articulation of a familiar Leninist organizing strategy that his articulation has guided Socialist Alternative Australia in their last, I'm not sure how long, 10, 15 years maybe. So Armstrong starts off by saying that in this section of the reading that there are two preconditions for building a mass revolutionary workers' party. One is objective conditions that are outside of our control, and that's like a decisive radicalization across society, across a significant layer of workers that makes them receptive to socialist ideas. And two, subjective conditions, things that depend on what we do. And that subjective condition is a cohered, sizable body of committed revolutionaries, a cadre, and that is capable of intervening in labor and social movements to advance struggle and to win their fellow fighters to revolutionary socialism. And then Armstrong goes on to say there are three types or stages of organization in the Marxist tradition: discussion circles, propaganda groups, and parties. Each is larger and more capable of leading struggle than the one that precedes it. Propaganda groups are sort of the thing in question, right? We know we're not a party. We're not just a discussion circle. So propaganda groups are oriented on ideological clarification, but have like a discussion circle, but they have a broader range of activity. And then from the other reading, we heard from Plekhanov in defining propaganda and agitation. Uh, Plekhanov said a propagandist presents many ideas to few people, and an agitator presents a few ideas to many people. Um, so back to the Armstrong. Armstrong talks about propaganda and agitation, uh, or he breaks down propaganda into different types. He says there's general or abstract propaganda, and then there's concrete or agitational propaganda. And so the general and abstract is like broad ideas about everything, meant to offer a wide understanding of society and capitalism. Uh, and then concrete or agitational propaganda is specific ideas about a specific thing and is accompanied by a call to action. And Armstrong says, and obviously we agree, like we need both. But when we're lacking when we're small and lacking in influence, we can barely demonstrate our politics in action. We must recruit more on the basis of ideas, so more on propaganda than agitation. And I want to say here, this is really crucial. Apparently, Socialist Alternative uses the term interventionist propaganda group. So they don't just say propaganda group. They've tacked on an adjective to modify to explicitly address a pitfall of overemphasizing propaganda, uh, which is abstaining from struggle. So they're trying to address that. Um, so saying interventionist propaganda group is sort of like saying agitational propaganda group. So, we're not trying to divorce the two and say, but we're, yeah. Anyway, all right. So Armstrong says many small revolutionary groups come to grief by overestimating their capabilities and exaggerating their ability to influence struggle. They remain propaganda groups whether or not they think they are activist groups and are less effective for not recognizing what they are. We are primarily arguing our ideas by holding public meetings, by organizing study groups, by tabling, distributing flyers, selling books, writing articles, spreading propaganda on social media, and talking to people. Um, we're doing that more than we're able to agitate for mass action or run for office. Not that that's on the table, but um, we participate in social movements and labor struggles to argue for how they can win, to argue for the need for mass action, to argue ideas, to try to win people radicalized by struggle to a socialist standpoint. Okay, there's a section on political clarification, and Armstrong talks about how the process of political clarification among uh, communists has taken different forms throughout history. So Marx and Engels had to develop an analysis of capitalism and establish the core theoretical basis for the communist movement. They also, played a role in building revolutionary organizations and producing mass propaganda, but they really like set a baseline or a new baseline. Uh, uh, the Bolsheviks had to master a range of theoretical and strategic questions. The imperialist nature of World War II, the need to turn the war into a civil war against their own ruling class, the rediscovery of Marxist teachings that the capitalist state must be smashed for workers to come to power, the rejection of stagism, how and when to launch an insurrection, many questions. Our tasks are different. Uh, but we build on the shoulders of giants. Uh, we must critically study and absorb Marxist ideas, update them, and train cadre that can fight for them and apply them in struggle. We need to be patient and do the basic work of establishing a core of permanent persuaders capable of carrying the Marxist method into battle. So moving on, Armstrong says if the first task of an interventionist propaganda group is ideological clarification or establishing a commitment to Marxist theory and traditions, the second is to build a bigger group. Uh, and he says there can be no compromises or concessions with eclectic, soft left ideas that fudge political questions. Cadre must be able to scientifically evaluate the development of class struggle and society in order to figure out how to take advantage of these developments. They must understand and be able to carry out the mechanics of building the organization. Uh, so Marxist groups try to relate to the vanguard. Interventionist propaganda groups try to relate to the vanguard, the most politically conscious section of the class and the already established left-wing forces. We do not try to appeal to everyone. Doing so would be, be a mistake of mistaking ourselves for a mass party, that's able to agitate that way. Um, and it would hold us back in our current state. But currently there is no organized political vanguard in any meaningful sense, no mass socialist organization, and no significant current of politicized workers that revolutionaries can orient to. But periodically, mass movements erupt that radicalize and organize significant numbers into activity, and we have to be there. Interventionist propaganda groups won't be in a position to lead the struggle, but we can argue strategy, lead the struggle on a mass level. I mean, certainly we can lead small struggles, but we can argue strategy. We can make concrete proposals for a way forward. We can draw out lessons at all stages of struggle. We can point out the role of the police, the media, the government, the trade unions, and connect particular issues with a broader critique of capitalism. Um, So Armstrong goes on to has a section about like working among students, and we in Firebrand have largely rejected that laser focus on campus organizing, though not for the crude workerist reasons that some socialists do, like considering students to be petty bourgeois or whatever the fuck. Um, but we recommend an organic approach to organizing. We recommend and have adopted an organic approach. Like we fight where we stand, we get in where we fit in. That was corny. I can't believe I wrote that. Um, we're against artificial implantation in student or workplace organizing, in at least in the near term. Um, uh, Socialist Horizon has a group in San Marcos. They're comprised of a professor and some students, and they should be organizing on campus. You know, uh, uh, and a similar principle applies to labor organizing. Branches with members with good organizing opportunities in their workplaces or unions should pursue them. In Denver, we have organized support committees around members in critical positions and in critical periods, including a teacher and a radical caucus in their union. Um, but we're not fixated on unionized workers or industrial workers, like some socialists are. I was glad to hear Bill Mullen with Socialist Horizon. I'm not sure if you're here, Bill. Recommend a focus on social reproduction theory. And to me, that cuts against the class reductionist and workers trends in the socialist movement, and we need to do that. Um, I do want to highlight one point Armstrong makes in this section about students. He says small socialist groups may tend toward abstract propagandism, which pulls them away from relating to people's real concerns and into sectarian irrelevance. Um, s- he- so we need to consciously look for ways to interact with people and to participate in and be relevant in struggle in order to minimize this danger of like slipping into abstract propagandism, which we're opposed to. Um, another related issue that has come up in the history of the socialist movement is what some have called programitis, which is the focus on developing the perfect political program that will solve all of humanity's needs in advance of anyone adopting it, you know, and fixating on the development of this perfect program rather than like arming ourselves with a basic framework and then throwing ourselves into struggle. Um, so yeah, practical involvement in struggle is a necessary counterpart to theoretical training. And then Armstrong goes on to say that socialists must develop a propaganda routine and be able to relate to people, or sorry, a propaganda routine of public meetings, social media, writing articles, flyers, raising slogans at protests, etc. Such a routine forces us to look outward and address people outside our ranks who only agree with some of our arguments. Um, I would say we also need intervention routines, um, and we have them. We may not be able to lead thousands into action, but we can and should make forays into agitation where possible. We, we can work in social movements and trade unions. We can join existing struggles and organize our own actions and campaigns. We can use the United Front tactic, or the spirit of the United Front tactic, since it's not uh, since our conditions are different than what it was developed for. But we can generally use the United Front tactic to fight both alongside reformists and to distinguish ourselves from them. Um, and we have to be able to relate to people on a range of questions. We need to be able to take up specific issues and show how they fit into a Marxist analysis of what's wrong with the world. And next week we're going to be reading some of what is to be done, and Justin's from Socialist Horizon is going to be talking about that. But um, this idea of being able to relate to people on a number of questions or a range of questions makes me think of Lenin's ideal of the tribune of the people. He talks about that in What Is to Be Done. Uh, we have to be able to react to every manifestation of tyranny and oppression and generalize them to produce a single picture of police violence and capitalist exploitation, and to continually point to class struggle as the way out. So wrapping up here, yes, consciousness changes in struggle, and without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. How do we square that circle? Through the art of through the art and science of Bolshevism, of course. Um, so as Armstrong says, I think our tasks are to develop a clear and deep understanding of Marxist politics, to develop a layer of cadre that can apply those politics by putting them into practice and relating to an audience and making the rubber hit the road. We cannot change the objective ebbs and flows of class struggle, but subjective forces like the coherence of our groups, the clarity of our perspectives, and the experience and confidence of our members matter. By embracing our role as interventionist propaganda groups, we can make headway against the pace of events and hope to do so with y'all. Thanks.